And as promised, joining me now is the White House Press Secretary, Jen Psaki. Jen, thanks so much for joining us. A lot of folks are looking forward to the president's speech tonight. I know you guys are looking forward to the president's speech tonight, marking a little bit early, one day early, the 100 days in office. What do you expect to get out of it in terms of cooperation in Congress?
Well, what the president hopes to do tonight is talk a little bit about where we've come from over the last 100 days, some of the progress that's been made, more than 200 million shots in the arms of Americans. 85% of the country has received checks for $1,400, up to $1,400, getting people back to work and, of course, getting the pandemic under control, but also give an update on the work that he sees ahead. And part of what he's going to talk about tonight is a bold proposal, the American Families Plan. And he thinks that has a lot of pieces in it that people in the country, Democrats, Republicans, independents, will really get excited about. Universal child care, universal pre-K, getting more funding and support for community college. These are things we should all get excited about. So he's hopeful that actually his agenda can be a driving force for bringing people together in Congress.
So these are very popular. The disagreement is how to pay for them. Is there any consideration being given to breaking these up to get individual bills negotiated with Republicans so that they don't have to pass through reconciliation?
Absolutely. There's lots of paths forward, Katie, and some of that could be smaller bills. The bills could look slightly different. We're very much open for business to hear ideas, talk about, exchange ideas, see what people are proposing from both sides of the aisle. There was a counter proposal earlier this week, or last week, I should say. We're talking at a staff level, with members, with committee staff, and I expect the president will invite members down here to the White House next week or soon after that to have a discussion about the path forward. But absolutely, there's lots of paths forward, lots of ways to get this done. Could be smaller packages, a range of options on the table.
Let's talk about paid family leave, because there are some out there who are worried that this is not enough of a priority for this administration. They wanted to see it in the COVID relief package, for instance, or they say 10 years to get there is just too long, or they say they're worried it's one of the things that will end up on the cutting room floor. Can you ensure, or can you give any calm to those who are worried it's not going to get done with this administration and are especially worried given how broadly popular it is and how there are some Republicans who support it who have their own ideas for how to pay for it?
Well, of course it's popular. I'm a mom. You're a mom. Moms should get 12 weeks paid leave across the country, no matter where they work. Now, there's a transitioning in, as you referenced, Katie, of getting 12 weeks of paid leave mandated across the country. And that's what the president's proposed. He would not have proposed this if he wanted it to drop off, or if he thought it should drop off, or if he didn't think that it was something that Congress should move forward on. We know there's going to be a range of ideas on how to do this from both sides, from Democrats who may want it to be faster, Republicans who may not like components of it. We're going to have a discussion about it. That's democracy in action and how things happen and how things get passed into law. But the fact that he's talking about this in his first joint session speech before 100 days of office, just under the wire, tells you this is a priority to the president, and this is something he wants to absolutely get done.
I do want to give a shout out to all the dads out there who will say that it's necessary for them as well.
Yes, that's
true. And the moms who desperately need the dads or the partners, whomever is there to help in those first early weeks and months. I had Jake Sherman on a little while ago, and he knows Congress better than any reporter. He said anything with a tax hike the Republicans aren't going to get on board with. Is there consideration being given to changing that? I mean, are you willing to negotiate on the tax hike for the very rich?
Well, I think, look, the way people should see this is the president is making a proposal, a historic investment in education and childcare, something that will help women and men, as you said, help the next generation of people who are going to be leading our workforce across the country. He thinks we should propose a way to pay for it. His proposal would bring the highest tax rate back to what it was during George W. Bush's presidency, and it would also only impact 1% of Americans. And on capital gains, just over $1 million, people who are making over $1 million through that. So that's how he's proposed that it can be on the backs of the very, very highest income Americans. If there's an alternative way to pay for it, we're open to hearing that. But he is not going to stand by. He won't support. He won't sign something where it would raise taxes on people making under $400,000 a year. There are limited options. He's proposed what he thinks the best path forward is to pay for it.
I have to get your thoughts on Rudy Giuliani. There are those out there who will suspect the timing of this. It's being done under this administration, done under Merrick Garland as Attorney General. They might accuse this administration of political targeting.
Well, first, I can assure you that what is new or may feel different in this administration is that the Justice Department is independent. The president made that clear when he announced the nomination of Merrick Garland. And the attorney general made clear in his hearing that he would not have taken the job unless he could operate in an independent manner. So people should know that. And I assure you our focus here is on the joint address tonight, on announcing the American Families Plan, and certainly not on Rudy Giuliani.
Did you guys know this raid was coming?
That's all in the Justice Department. Certainly, I did not know.
Jen Psaki. Jen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Hope to see you back again soon.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.